I'd like to bring the meeting to order. Welcome everybody here tonight. Could roll please be called?
Blue. Here. Bozeman.
Here.
Disharoon.
Here.
Holshouser. Here. Humbles. Here. Reed.
Here.
Samhain.
Thank you. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will now move on to the public participation portion of the meeting, and Dr. Dearman will begin with the superintendent's report.
Sure. Public participation, no communications in the audience. Isn't that nice? Oh, we're down here. Okay. All right, superintendent's report. First one, I'd like to recognize one of our school resource officers, Mr. Stephen Ryle. Got an email. We always like to hear good things about the people that are helping and working with our students. So I'll just kind of read what was given to me by this parent. A big thank you to Resource Officer Stephen Ryle this morning. He greeted the students getting out of cars with a "Can I shelter you from the rain?" He walked them up to the building. Thank you for keeping our kids safe and for the act of kindness. He made me smile on this gloomy day. So in recognition of Mr. Ryle, I'd like to give him a certificate. If you would come forward. Also, a certificate of recognition. Susan Piper and Brooke Norman, teachers at Dunlap Grade School, received a Peoria County recycling grant in the amount of $498. Brooke's not able to attend, but if Susan would come forward, please. FOIA request. I've had 3 FOIA requests. HBO Real Sports with Bryant Gumbel requested again. I got after them because I thought they were requesting the same information again, but it's actually a little bit different. How many boys played a sport other than football this time, and then how many of those in a sport other than football receive free and reduced lunch. So we met that requirement, sent that off. We had a request by a parent for our right at school policy, and then a request from Smart Procure, a commercial FOIA request on purchasing records from June 6th to current time. And Damon took care of that, so we are in full compliance with those requests. Our school nutrition program was found to be in compliance by the Illinois State Board, so congratulations to them to meet those requirements. We have our district leadership team meeting with the community set for next Tuesday. We'll have representation from the community as far as parents, administration, and then I'd like to have 2 board members. So you don't have to answer now. Just let me know maybe by the end of the week if you can make it, or tonight will be great too. If I have more than 2, I'll just put names in a hat and just pull them out. Need to be careful going over 2 because of OMA, and that kicks in a whole other set of requirements. So that's open to any board member. Just let me know. Teacher shortage. I should have a handout that should be posted by Carrie. She'll get it here in a second. I went to the, the LUDA conference, large unit district, up in Chicago a couple weeks ago, and that conference was very specifically focused on the teacher shortage. You can skip that page and go to the bottom one if you would. Scroll down to the chart, and that's going to be very difficult to read. This is a common problem, not just for Dunlap, but for any school district within the state of Illinois. It's been all over the news. It's well reported. And basically what the conference focused on is, how do we address this issue? But then when I saw this chart with these numbers, it was just staggering. I mean, we've kind of felt the crunch here. Poor Heather was scrambling like crazy to get some positions filled, up until the midnight hour. And, times have just changed. And there was times when there was an elementary position and you post it and you'd have 300 to 400 applicants. That ship has sailed. We had a junior high PE position I was aware of that, had 12 applicants. And if you're any kind of hiring person, usually when you get 12 applicants, you can probably wipe about 6 of those off the table. It's not very good. So probably like half a dozen legit applicants for a position that would have been very easy to fill, a decade ago. If you look at those numbers, what's really staggering is the new basic skills test that's administered now to graduates. There's a couple problems with that. The president of McKendree University presented at the conference, and he shared that before they changed that test, they were one of the higher performing schools in the state at an 89% passage rate. Since they've implemented the new test, they're still one of the higher rated institutions as far as their students passing that test at 29%. The state average is 20. So that's a very difficult test for a lot of teachers to pass. And that's kind of intimidating because you don't take that test until right before you get ready to begin your student teaching. Well, that's very much in the tail end of your career. So as a student going in, I would be very concerned, very worried that there is a strong possibility that I may get to the end of my educational career, invested all this time and money and effort into educating myself at the college level, and come out of it with nothing as far as a teaching certificate in hand. With that being said, what are some of the other problems? And I'll just kind of briefly go through some of these. Legislation has been passed to change the retirement age to 67. That's not real enticing. I don't want a 67-year-old kindergarten teacher trying to get up and down off the floor. That's just not realistic. And then you're paying into a pension system on a tiered system that may or may not be there because the financial troubles of the state of Illinois have been well documented. So that's certainly not going to attract people. The college costs in Illinois are skyrocketing. So if you look at those things and put 2 and 2 together, a lot of our students are almost being encouraged to go out of state. And, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but my wife is an educator, I'm an educator. Odds are, if you look at the statistics, one or the other, if not both of our children, will have a strong likelihood of going into education themselves. And I've had the conversation with my own children, don't. It's just not a good field right now. Or if it's your true calling, if it's your passion in life, follow your passion, follow your heart, do what makes you happy, but get out of Illinois. Don't do it. And that's what's happening, unfortunately, in a lot of cases. And once students leave and get displaced, the odds of them coming back become much higher that they won't. So that's something that's happening across the state. And then the low respect, low pay of educators is a problem as far as in the social community. What I have done, or what we're working on doing, I went to the Peoria Promise event at the Civic Center Saturday. And while I was there, I talked with Dr. Sheila Quirk-Bailey. She's president of ICC, and I'm working with her to try to bring attention to this, primarily at the legislative level, to see if we can't get some movement to lighten some of these restrictions. Because as you can see at those numbers, look at the number of students that are taking the test to try and get licensed. They're dropping dramatically, and the problem's going to go from bad to worse. So there isn't a light at the end of the tunnel that's coming to help us with this. I just don't see what the solution is, so we need to be proactive. So just want the board to be informed. We felt it already, and unfortunately, I'd like to tell you it's going to get better, but I would be doing you a disservice if I did that. So trying to make some efforts to work with others that are in the same situation to try and bring attention to this and hopefully get some movement in a more positive direction.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
These are the tests that were administered, right, for 2016?
Those aren't the tests that were passed. Those are
You
administered.
said 20-some percent
20%.
passed the basic skills, so we're looking at 200 that are
Yep.
passing out of the 1,000 that are taking it.
On average, yes, in 16, 17, that is correct. Yeah, very good question. Redistricting of middle schools. Working on that, Heather, I'll give her credit, has done a lot of work with our local numbers, and we've been playing around with that. But then we had some training with Decision Insight, which is a company we use to forecast our growth models. And their software is really amazing in that you can move things around as far as the lines, and it's very, very detailed and can project out up to 10 years. So just an information item next month will be, I'll be bringing a recommendation at that time, but we're still doing a little bit more research to make sure that what we believe is correct. We're going to verify that through Decision Insight and hopefully have a 10-year projection to bring to the board as informational next month. So that is being worked on and is in its final stages. A reminder to the board, November board meeting has been moved up a week because of Thanksgiving. It would be the Wednesday before. So we're going to have a little shortened time frame this time. So just have that on your radar. And then I was asked by President Disharoon to include an enrollment projection. So it's a hard copy this month because it was after the packet went out. I think Carrie has attached it to the board packet, but I brought you a hard copy just so you could see. And it does reflect what I have been sharing with you. We are up about 50 students in comparison to the same time last year. So seeing some growth still, very slow growth, but growth is growth. So those are accurate numbers at this point. And that is all that I have for my superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll move on to the public comments. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? If so, please raise your hand. Did you say there was one person? Okay. Okay. Seeing no one, this will conclude the public participation portion of the meeting, and we'll move on to the information discussion items. Information regarding the FY18 audit report is included in the packet. Russ Rumbold from Gorenz and Associates is here to present the audit report. Russ? Welcome. Does it matter?
It might be
right here is
easier
fine, yeah.
for you to put your,
We have a lot to cover. There is plenty to cover, but not that much. Okay, so each of you should have a handout, and we'll cover the handout extensively. I also have a few pages tagged within the audit report itself, and I think you have the blue-bound audit packets. Yeah. And so we'll cover that after we go through the handout. So with that, if everybody has a handout, I will start. The first page of the handout, the first page, the top third section, has the fund balance of the district for 16, 17, and 18. And you can see 18 is the far right-hand column. There's almost $200 million worth of fund balance at this district, but you think about that, logically, what is that made up of? Well, it's the buildings, it's the equipment, it's the hard tangible assets, if you will. $133 million of that is the fixed assets of the districts, and then there's some restricted funds. So if we pull all of that out and look at the net equity and the operating funds, which is the education fund, your building fund, transportation fund, and your working cash fund, $46,902,000 in net equity and the operating funds. There are some unpaid teachers contracts at the end of June. Teachers would still be paid out on their old contracts. So $1,377,000. So if we look at the unencumbered equity in the operating funds, $45,525,000. That's an increase of roughly $5.5 million from the previous fiscal year. The middle section of the first page details out the actual versus budget expenditures and revenue. I like to see that within plus or minus 10%. Revenue or expenditures, and you can see the operation and maintenance fund expenditures were expended at roughly 85% of the budget. We went back and took a look. It wasn't made up of one individual item. Nothing really popped out. Salaries at about 50, supplies at 78, HVAC contract at 78. There was a provision for contingencies of 125 built into that wasn't spent. So not anything one item that popped there. The transportation fund actually collected 120% of the budget and spent 75% of the budget. And most of that was in salaries and fuel that wasn't spent. So I guess if the budget is going to be off, you'd rather collect more than you anticipated and spend less than you anticipated, which was the case in all in the building fund and transportation fund. The bottom section of the first page is the financial profile score of the district, and ISB ultimately sets that score. We don't set the score, but we do run through the calculation. So it hasn't changed for the 16, 17, and 18 to 3.9, which is financial recognition, and most of you can probably guess what the 0.1 is, which would be debt. Next page of the handout, results of operations, if you will, for the year 16, 17, and 18, and then the change in the far right-hand column of fiscal year 17 to 18. So I look at the first subtotal, and you always want a positive number as far as revenue. You're hoping that that the district had more operating revenue than it did the previous fiscal year, and that was the case at $3.4 million. Most of that is made up in what? Real estate taxes, $1.6 million. And then general state aid, we still have the title general state aid, but it's actually evidence-based funding now, increased $1.2 million. And again, so that's a 9% increase as far as dollars revenue brought in. If we track all the way to the bottom, second number from the bottom, the district spent $647,000 more than the previous year. That's a 1.8% increase. And we'll look at that in more detail as well. Some of the items that were less, I guess, in the current year: capital outlay, HVAC services, buses being purchased. Again, thinking about the operating funds, your ed, the building, transportation. So the next page of the handout, looking at where dollars come from, and I think the next page, even after this, will even show this better, but 77% of a dollar that comes into the district comes from real estate taxes. So if we add the other local revenue, which primarily would be maybe some interest earnings, a food service program, corporate replacement tax, those types of local dollars that are coming from local taxpayers. If we add the other local revenue with the real estate taxes, 84% of the revenue of the district comes from local. Went back to 2008, 89% was from local, which I thought was, if you would have made me guess, I would have said it'd been the same. But actually the state is at 14%, and they were at 10%, previously. So that evidence.
What is it attributed to?
I think the evidence-based funding definitely impacted that. Okay. It used to be that general state aid was a consistent number and never went plus or minus $100,000 for the past 20 years. The next page of the handout, to me, this page of the handout really gives you a picture of what funds the district, what is the engine of revenue in the Dunlap district. And you can see the real estate taxes just dwarfs every other category of revenue. And it's the one that has consistently, over the past few years anyway, has increased in dollar amount. You can see other local revenue has been flat. General state aid or evidence-based funding, however you want to look at that, you can see where it has increased this year. And again, we saw that on that second page. And then the other state sources is lumpy, primarily to the point of that the state, typically there's 4 payments of categorical expenses. Some years the state funds that at 3 payments instead of 4. Typically the district never receives 4 payments. It's typically 3 or 5. Either the state is catching up from underpayments or it's underpaying, one of the two. Typically never 4. So that's more of a function of the state and how they fund the district, of the lumpiness there. And even then, you can think about the evidence-based funding in that it also includes some of your categoricals. So 5 payments of categoricals were received. And then, there's really kind of sort of another 4 payments of categoricals built within that evidence-based funding as well. You can see federal sources really hasn't done much either. But again, what's the driving force of this district? Real estate taxes. Next page of the handout has expenses for the education fund, building fund, transportation fund, and total of the operating funds. Comparing fiscal 17 to fiscal 18, I always like to look at salaries and benefits. What are salaries and benefits doing? Because as we will see, well, will it be the next page or not? Yeah, it is the next page. Most of what is spent as far as dollars being spent is on salaries and benefits. So that increase in the education fund by 3.26%, $842,000. Overall, the district, again, we saw that $647,000 on the second page. That was the percentage of additional expenditures, and it's a 1.77% increase. Just for, and I've given this in the past, just for thinking through things, 761 employees were on what was filed with the IRS on the fourth quarter tax return for payroll taxes. If we divide all of that by the salaries and benefits, $37,824 on average per employee. It's been $36,165 the previous year. That's about a 4.58% increase. Again, full-time, part-time, everybody's in the 761. Next page of the handout, where a typical dollar is spent in the district. And as you can see, a typical dollar spent is going to salaries and benefits to the tune of 78%. It's not unique. It's a fact of education. Most of the expenditures do come in the form, in the operating funds, do come in the form of salaries and benefits. Now, 77% of the funding comes from real estate taxes, and 78%, there's almost a direct correlation there, isn't there, as far as what the expenditures go. So, next page of the handout, and you can see it almost mirrors the revenue as far as what are the typical expenses in the district. Well, salaries and benefits, you can see that takes up the primary chunk of a dollar that's spent, and it has historically, and it will going forward as well. The other categories really aren't changing much. They just don't make up that big of a piece of the budget. The capital outlay, in the operating funds, typically buses, IT, those types of things. Tuition and other objects, special ed tuition, other objects. So, next page of the handout is relatively simple in that one line represents the revenues and one line represents the expenses. And you hope the gold line is above the other line, right? And it has been. Other than in 2013, it looks like it was basically a wash. But in this year, the spread between the two is roughly $5 million. Next page of the handout. Two different things here. The top is the students, and you can see the students is the comparative 9-month average daily attendance. It is not fall housing numbers. So you probably have been shared fall housing numbers recently that this is not those numbers. But as you can see, there was the first decrease from 2005 to 2018, first decrease over that time period of 55 students. The bottom part of this is the comparative estimated operating expense per pupil, and again, this is a state mandated calculation. And it's also, you can't go to the financials and divide by the number of students and come back to this. It's a mandated calculation that ISB puts together, but looking at it, we can look at and make some comparisons, if you will, to other unit districts within the state of Illinois. It does include Chicago districts. I mean, it's not just downstate districts. And it includes big, small, all types of unit districts. But as you can see, $4,000 spent per student, less than the average in the state of Illinois at the Dunlap district. So, the accountant in me, there's about 5 different ways to look at this, but the accountant in me says, that's a great job. We're educating at a good value, and we're providing a great service. And I'm sure there's plenty in the room that have the other side of the brain that aren't like me that would say, I would really like to, well, it's item E up there, new Dunlap High School courses. And what could we do with another $4,000 student in providing education to student? That's the other side that very rarely crosses my mind. my mind is always focused on we're doing a great job of educating students at a good value. Next page of the handout is and again, so to me, this is important just because we've already talked that the revenue engine of the district is real estate taxes. So, two functions of how real estate taxes ultimately flow to the district. Number one is the assessed value of the district. That's the top graph here. And the bottom is the tax rate of the district. So, as the assessed value goes up, typically you can have a stable tax rate or maybe even a declining tax rate. It just depends. And you can see that the assessed value has grown since 2005 in the Dunlap district. It has been on an uptrend all along. In 2018 is really the 2017 levy. But, going forward, where is that going in the future? That's what would be in the back of my mind as a group of board members. The bottom piece is a comparative of the tax rate itself, and you can see 4.54 is the 2017 levy. Again, you haven't passed an 18 levy. That will be in December, right? So that actually has declined for the past couple of years. And the big increase in, 13 to 14 debt service and retirement levies. Next page of the handout is the operating fund balance. There's two lines here. One is the top line includes the advanced taxes that are received in June. So advanced taxes are roughly $15 million in the operating fund. So we'll just round it at that, $15 million. So in June you receive, maybe it's the 30th. It's not the 30th, but it's towards the end of June you receive a good chunk of money that's really meant to fund the next fiscal year, right? So that spread between the two of, if we're looking at 18, $46,902,000 includes those advanced taxes. The fund balance below $31,624,000 has the advanced taxes taken out of it. I kind of liken that to homecoming and how my daughter would like to get ready. Right? I mean, that's not necessarily how my daughter would look every day. But it's kind of like the balance sheet is dressed up, if you will. Not intentionally, that's just how the finances flow of the tax cycle. So next page is the Halloween graph, and that is the on behalf payments. And if we just left it at that and glazed over it, no big deal, it's on behalf payment. An on behalf payment is what the state has theoretically put into the TRS system on behalf of the Dunlap district. Okay, so in the financial statements, and we'll look at the one page that includes that, but it's a revenue and expense. It's required to be both a revenue and expense. So in essence, that $13,921,000 that you can see for 18, which is the TRS component, there's also a health insurance component. But the TRS component, $13,921,000, it's a revenue, it's expense, it doesn't change the ending position of the district, but it is required to be added in. And you can imagine, I heard superintendent discussing, and it wasn't a secret that the state of Illinois isn't in great fiscal shape, right? And pensions are a big part of that. And so I can see this, and this has been an issue that was discussed probably maybe 5 years ago as a real hot topic of the state wanting to push these dollars back down to the district. And I feel like it's simmered. We really haven't talked about it, I would say, within the last 5 years. It really hasn't been a big issue. But I have a feeling it's going to make its way back into discussions, whether it's this next coming year after elections, or maybe it's even being discussed now. But this is the dollars that, and I can't tell you that this is the cash flow, this is the actual pension expense. It may not be the cash flow, but this is the numbers that are being bantered around of how could that be pushed back down to the district.
I have a question.
Sure.
Why did it go down gradually if the number of staff increased?
Sure. So that's a good question. So again, this is an actuarial calculation. So the decrease from 17 to 18, okay, that's an actuarial calculation. Before that, you can see how in 16 to 17, believe that's right. 16 to 17, there's the big increase. That calculation previous to the fiscal year 17 was based on credible earnings times the federal funds match rate for TRS. That was how that calculation was done in the past. Currently, that has changed to where it has changed to an actuarial calculation rather than based on the federal funds rate.
And why
which
did it
dropped-
change again? They just changed it.
Right.
So it could be less?
Right. I doubt it's going to be less. I mean, you're not going to go back to the levels down that you saw from 2008 to 2016. That isn't going to happen.
Okay.
Now, the other thing that happened was the federal funds rate went from like 35% down to 10% this year. So if we were looking at credible earnings of teachers times a rate, it would have been credible earnings times 35% in 17 and credible earnings times 10% in, it would have dropped off substantially in the current fiscal year. So again, that may be a piece of why we're going to an actuarial calculated number. Just, again, kind of following the Halloween theme of that graph, the total net pension liability of the Dunlap district, so that's the pension liability of Dunlap district, $144 million. I'm just going to round it off. $144 million. Anybody venture to guess what the district's portion of that is? So we've got $144 million, and you don't have this in your handout, by the way. I just grabbed it. Of the $144 million, about $3 million is the district's portion of that liability. Okay, so that leaves the state on the hook for $141 million. So it gives you another kind of feel of the magnitude and the incentive. I don't know if incentive's the right word, but kind of the natural push down to let's push some of this off our balance sheet and push it onto have it funded at least with somebody else. And again, I'm not saying that that is going to happen. You know, at one point it was bannered around of having a 10-year phase. And there's been all kinds of discussions about it. But I think as far as the board's concerned, at least to know it's out there. Like I said, that's my Halloween talk. And it wasn't a treat. So. The next page of the handout, outstanding debt of the district. As you can see in 2018, $58,203,000 is the outstanding debt of the district. It did increase this year. And if you recall, the sales tax bonds were issued. I forget what the exact amount is, but that is why the increase was there this year was the sales tax bond. Next page of the handout, and really the next 3 pages is just more information as far as the real estate taxes, because again, I feel like that's the biggest, it's the biggest revenue driver of the district. It's a lot of information. If I would have just asked and said, what do you think creates the most tax dollars within the district? You know, I would tend to say, oh, it's commercial, right? I mean, I can think of all these different commercial buildings in the district, but it's still real estate, or it's still residential. If you look at the top line, that's the residential is $602 million of the assessed value, to where commercial is $285 million. And then you can see the farmland, industrial, and the railroads make up $41 million. So it's not the farmland. And it is mostly, a good chunk of it is from residential. The next page just gives that overlay again of, you know, what actually has increased, right? I mean, look at the residential from where it started to, in this graph, to where it ended up. That has been the driving force in the increase of EAV in the district as well. And the next page just goes through the numbers approach. If you don't like the graphs, you can look at the numbers. So that's the handout. I do have a couple things to take a look at in the audit report itself for the Blue Bound book, and hopefully nobody has me on a timer. I had one district that did put me on.
No, we did not.
Okay. Hey, on page 5, the reason you hire an accounting firm to audit the district is to issue an opinion on the financial statements. You don't have to turn there. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to tell you it's called an unmodified opinion. So that we're in the blue book, the blue handout. So, it's an unmodified opinion that translates into what you may recall as being a clean opinion. Okay, so in the past,
Be a
that's
what?
a clean audit opinion, an unmodified opinion on the regulatory basis of accounting. So, page 11, I think, is worthy of noting. A few things on page 11. It's a sideways statement, but in the far left-hand column is the education fund. There's a first subtotal of 33 million of revenue, and there's that 14 million that we talked about was on behalf. So there's, again, 14 million coming in, and if you drop down, there's disbursements on behalf, 14 million. So again, it doesn't change the position of the district. It's an in and an out. And then I guess in the other sources of funds, you can see in the far right-hand column, $8,622,000. So that was the alternate revenue source bond that came in. One more as far as the statements are concerned, page 12. This one I think is worthy of noting as well. It's the third number from the bottom, and I know that the print's small. It says school facility occupational tax proceeds. And so that is like the sales tax, right? And so this is the first year, I think, where you've generated this much revenue of sales tax. So $1 million roughly of sales tax that came through. $720,000 of that was left in the debt service fund to fund the alternate revenue source bonds. And then $324,000 is over in the capital projects fund. So again, I feel like that's something that is new this year in the financials. Page 34, at least want to cover this, hope to do a good job on it. It's a little confusing, but I don't want you going home tonight reading through this entire packet or this entire report and stumbling across the pledged securities. And I don't think maybe nobody would have, but at the bottom of page 34, it says that there are $47.7 million of uninsured and collateralized with securities held by pledging financial institutions. So that's to say that, the Dunlap district has X dollars in the bank account, okay? And, the FDIC limits are only $250 on an account. So the district wants to be in a position where it's those dollars are backed by pledges of the bank. In other words, I'm not saying the bank is weak or the banking system's weak at all, but if the bank would have an issue that you have collateral pledged, that you have access to your dollars to back it. This is to say that they are not insured, so there's no insurance to back this up. There's no FDIC. There is $250. You get so much FDIC, but then it is collateralized with securities. It just so happens that the bank holds the securities as well. In an ideal situation, somebody else or a trust department owns that has holding of the securities if you are going up the ladder of being secure. So again, I don't want you to think that this is necessarily a bad thing. And that's the way I feel like without talking about it, it could be interpreted. The deposits are collateralized other than the $500,000 that you can see.
So is there any way to have them be?
Yeah, you could ask the financial institution, see what they say. I mean, maybe that's a finance committee to take a look at and see exactly how the securities are held and in whose name they're held and those types of things.
So how much again is not insured?
So again, 47 million is uninsured, but it is collateralized. Okay.
So
and
that's
you
safe.
want
In other words, that's safe.
that number is safe.
So it's the
Could
500.
it be safer? Sure, maybe it could be safer. Put it as safe. The bottom number there, the 500,000, was the number that is uninsured and uncollateralized. So those dollars, if all your banks failed, the district would have been out as of June 30th, $500,000. Now, to say that, that's always a moving target as well. You're bringing in dollars, like we said. You brought in X million dollars in advanced real estate taxes towards the end of the year. So this very well could have been brought right back in line at the end of July. So again, it's a moving target. But something to look at maybe. Page 43, and we're getting close to the end. Page 43, the top is a legal debt margin. I think that's a fairly important number to look at. So the legal debt margin is $128 million of the district, about $50 million is issued, leaving $77 million, or almost $78 million that could be issued. I'm not telling you to issue that, but it's good to know what those numbers are. And the last two are just FYI. Page 59 and page 65 has those advanced taxes. And page 65 has the levy for 15, 16, and 17 for anybody that's interested. A total of about $20 million came in June. Again, it's really to fund that next fiscal year of advanced taxes in total. So again, that's information that's there. So again, you think about the district. The fund balances are good, right? I think that's a definite. I think the education fund should have a strong fund balance, because I look at the working cash fund and it isn't like this district sits on a big pile of money in the working cash fund, which is, if you want to call it the rainy day fund, if you will. That if you had a lot less in the ed fund and you had a big working cash fund, that would be okay, but this district operates almost the exact opposite. The dollars are sitting in the ed fund. It's not necessarily sitting in the working cash fund. So again, good fund balances. You had good operational results, right? I mean, we looked at that. The operational results were good in the current fiscal year. You're not reliant on state funding, right? I mean, we saw that in the real estate taxes, and quite honestly, with the state budget and the way the state is, you'd rather be reliant on the local tax dollars. It's a safer revenue source, if you will, as a board and as a district perspective. And sales tax. The sales tax came through this year. That was a good thing as well. So going forward, managing growth, managing a decelerating EAP growth, right? Just managing. I mean, it's probably not going to get easier, right?
I had a question. I read someplace the treasurer's report does not match the district's accounting record.
Sure, so you saw the letter, yes. The treasurer's report probably should have some work on the treasurer's report, but currently your treasurer is what? The treasurer is the finance person as well here. So, currently you could be receiving a balance sheet and then a treasurer's report, but they're really the same person's preparing it. So I would say maybe going back and thinking about when Dave was the treasurer, he probably presented it on a monthly basis, the investment part. See that as maybe there being some value there as far as looking at the investment part. I'm not as concerned about the treasurer's report did not match the records of the district as far as on the accounting records. There was a differential, and primarily, and Damon can speak to this as well, but I think it was just a matter of there was a treasurer to start the year. The treasurer was moved to another person. There was an accountant, the finance director at the beginning of the year moved to an intern, moved to Damon. I think that process, some of the treasurer's report, as far as putting it together, was lost in translation.
Okay. And so what was the difference? Was it significant? Or?
I don't know what it was off the top of my head.
Okay.
I mean, some of the funds matched.
Okay.
Some of them didn't. So. But maybe getting a format together that works for the board, that works for Damon, and communicates what you needed to communicate to you. Again, I would probably be more interested in the investment side.
Okay.
Not to say that everything's not important.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Russ.
Sure.
Appreciate it. The school activity account reports are included in the board packet. Are there any questions? Information regarding the high school random drug testing for the month of September is available in the packet. Are there any questions? Next, David Johnson will present information regarding the Global Scholar Program. And Mr. Adrian. Oh, sorry.
broken chair.
It's going to be
Is that better?
musical chairs.
Yeah,
I had it last time.
sorry.
Okay, please go ahead.
First of all, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. You feel a burden when you present a program that many people have been involved in to do justice by everybody who's been involved, so I'm going to try and do that. I want to start off with some thank yous here. I want to thank Heather Bowman for her direction as we were working through the program and what it could look like. That was very instrumental. I appreciate that. I also want to thank Scott Adrian for all his work as well in terms of from the moment this was discussed until kind of us sitting here now, he has been a cheerleader for what's best and how do we achieve that. So I'll talk more about that as we go. This last spring, we had an opportunity to go to a U of I Global Scholar Summit with our students. Knew a little bit about the program, had done a little bit of work with it. So there's going to be students from all over Illinois going to meet and talk about global issues and to talk about this program in particular. So we discussed who would go. We have a 12 Eagles program, which is a group of students that we work with. They're kind of a way for us to communicate with the student body, hear what they're thinking, and to share some information back. Of the 12 students, 3 were available to go that day. This was a Saturday at 6 in the morning we were leaving. So I was very glad that they were able to attend. We drove to U of I together, shared some great conversation along the way. And I'd like to stop and recognize one of them who's here, who was able to, Katie volunteered for Saturday for the whole day. She brought a lot of energy today. And specifically, she gave me some passion too, because throughout the day, as we're listening to presentations from other students, a lot of the projects we're hearing about are problem-solution based, and they're talking from a global scale. So as we came back, I get to hear from them, what would that look like here? And basically, how soon can we start this? The other cool thing that I thought was really inspirational was, over and over again, I think we can do better. I think we can make our own twist on that. So thank you for the inspiration. I would also like to mention a little bit about the specifics of the program. So the 4 parts of the certificate are coursework. There's 8 classes students have to take that are considered globally focused. There's also a service learning component that we can talk about a little more. Global collaboration is also a piece, and then a summative capstone project. So when we came back, shared the thoughts from the students and my own passion with Mr. Adrian, and he was fired up about it as well. As you will find whenever there's new innovation for our kids, that he is a cheerleader for it. So asked, what would that next step look like? And the next step was sharing it with our ILT, our instructional leadership team. So our teacher is going to enjoy this as much as we do. You want to give them that opportunity to see what they think, and their input is so vital to if it'll work, because you want them to feel this is a great program too. So I'll let share now if I get it to work. The video, and we shared some of this information, also this video I'd like to share with you.
How many students did you say are currently part of this program?
0 now. 3 that went to this presentation that would like to bring it here.
3, okay.
Let's see if I can.
Did you say 12 were offered the opportunity and only 3 were able to attend?
We're able to attend Saturday morning, 6 o'clock, some athletes on there, some other family commitments.
This was just one function available to this group. It wasn't really the Illinois Global Scholar Program, but they were introduced to the Illinois Global Scholar Program while at that function.
You're not, so in other words, the program won't be limited to 12 students.
No.
They just have the
all our
opportunity
students
to
will
go
have
to
access
like the conference.
Correct. So in the 8 courses you're going to talk about, we decide what 8 courses they are. And a lot of those we already offer here. We just have to package them under a program and offer the capstone course and the global collaboration component, and then get that endorsement.
So I'm going to flip back to the presentation. I would just say that's in the board package hyperlinked if you want to check it out later. It's a 3-minute video. It kind of breaks down some of the nuances of the program. I'll just talk about it a little bit. In the video, it talks about some of the skills that are embedded in the Global Scholar Certificate Program. So some of the benefits are here, specifically for our students. Really going to do some work as juniors and seniors. That's who's going to be in the program. That would get them ready for college, that would have them doing some global collaboration. What I love about this program specifically is it's very action-based. And I think that if you hear people talk about the program, it's how do you take research and problems that you have and bring that into a solution that you can share with others. So I think that's one piece that our students really enjoyed also. And just to kind of outline it a little better, it's in the video as well. Globally focused coursework, which will be selected by our committee. The globally focused service learning. One example is the Illinois Waterway Cleanup Project. There's one piece that students could do to meet that criteria. Another piece would be a global collaboration or dialogue, like a Google Classroom session where they are, there's some scenarios where they've been projecting this with other students in other countries, especially through Naperville, which is where you're hearing, how are they exactly making this run. So that collaboration piece, they're actually going to be working with students in classrooms globally. That's part of that focus. And then also here, the performance-based capstone assessment task, which is the class that we're going to be asking for. This is where the most work is done. This is where students are going to identify a problem that they really want to work with, and then try and find out that solution through research. They're going to present it, and they're going to have a larger dialogue piece as well. So when we shared this with ILT, the instructional leadership team, the first comments that I was hearing was, how soon can we get this started? How can we be involved with it? And that was really inspirational for me. And some of them are in the room, some of our ILT members. Stand up. Here. Thank you very much. I just want to give a shout out to them because that's something I always need to recognize them for and always appreciate their support, especially when we're discussing new initiatives. So, thank you. So several of those members that just stood up are also going to be on our committee. Now, the heavy lifting for the certificate is going to be done by the committee. If you look at the names involved, you see teachers from across the disciplines. And I think the reason that you see teachers so passionate about it from different disciplines is that if you're talking about a problem solution approach, the students will be heavily engaged in. I think all of our teachers see benefit to that. Specifically, let's give one example what a student was doing. A student who took this capstone course in Naperville was the problem they identified from the news was landslides in India. And they were talking about how do we get people to change their practices there? Who do we need to talk to? So they were talking agriculture with farmers in India. They were talking to professors. They were talking about how to break the language barrier over there. They ended up doing an informational piece, doing a video. But as you can see, there's a lot of different disciplines that are involved there. And I think that our students really appreciate opportunities to do work that is real world and where they're applying skills from across disciplines as well. So that's something that this program really allows us to provide for our students. And with that, I want to have one of our committee members speak for a moment. Ashley Seener, who has been invaluable in terms of providing some guidance in terms of the classes that we count as globally focused. Would you like to come on?
So as you can see on the slide, we are already offering courses to our students that meet the criteria of globally focused courses. They cross all of our disciplines: English, science, social studies. We do have 9 total right now that we've identified. We're still investigating some additional courses that could potentially be added to the list. We also have all of our French and Spanish courses. So some students could be taking a foreign language, and that's potentially 5 of the 8 that they need for this certification. We also have a couple more that are going to be proposed next that are culture focused, but don't necessarily need the foreign language component. As a counselor, I do want to point out that our students are always asking us for different ways to get involved, to have new and exciting experiences, and to stand out in the crowd. We have a lot of students that have great test scores, great GPAs, but they are starting to apply to really selective and competitive colleges and universities. And those universities are asking them, what have you done in high school that sets you apart? Everyone that's applying here has great test scores and GPAs. And I feel like the Illinois Global Scholar Certificate, it's new. We will be the only school in Central Illinois, and we will be by far the smallest school that's offering this, if it's approved. And I think it just sets our students apart. It's going to give them the opportunity to have that service learning, to have that communication piece, and then if they take the capstone course, to really strengthen their college admissions and to write some incredible essays to talk to college reps about. So very excited for this announcement.
So, I mean, when we heard about the program, it allowed us to capitalize on our diversity here. We celebrate our diversity. We know we're very diverse. We have students that have all these unique experiences, but they don't really get, I don't want to say credit for them, but they don't get a clean package avenue to get a different endorsement. So now, when we go through this program, we realize that a lot of the courses we already offer fit in the program. We just have to offer the capstone and rephrase a few things. Now we can give them that capstone project experience, and then they get that certificate, that seal on the back of their transcript that says they're not only a global scholar. I mean, one of our goals is to prepare our students for a global economy and global society. We know the world's gotten smaller with all of our technology, so this is just a way to do some things we've already done, but really make it a nice clean package and give them that credit for it. So, and like Ashley said, it prepares them for their college resumes too. To be not only a global scholar, and you're going to be the only one south of I-80 in Illinois, it's a nice feather in their cap.
And there's just one course that we don't have that's required in order to complete the program and receive your certificate.
To kind of summarize that, and I think that'd be, if I were in your seats, the main thing I'd want to know is what exactly has to happen, even financially, to make this take place. A lot of the heavy lifting is going to be done by our Global Scholar Committee, and we want them to have a lot of say in what this looks like. So they're going to help pick out, along with our counseling team here, what are those classes going to be? Many of them our students are already taking. So nothing new needs to be added. We just have to decide, are they globally focused, and they meet that criteria. If you look at the service learning project, that committee is going to decide what counts for service learning. Students can apply for it, they can complete it, and the committee would then say they've achieved meeting that service learning criteria. Same with the global collaboration. So this group of staff members, largely teachers, is going to decide here's what that volunteer project looks like, here's what the dialogue looks like, here's the classes you can take. The only added expense would be the capstone class. And if you're thinking one elective class that could be offered once a year, depending on demand, it could end up being more. That's a pretty small cost considering what we're rolling out for students. So a lot of benefits there.
So I heard you say something about junior and senior year. It seems to me that a lot of our students are taking those AP classes and honors classes, or dual credit, so they can get the extra credit for college in the junior and senior year. Is there any way to either incorporate the AP dual credit and honors classes, or secondly, to have them start earlier, freshman and sophomore year, when they have a little bit more time?
That's an interesting question, and I think that's something that the committee could look at as well. What I really like about this is the committee is going to have a lot of say in terms of, does the coursework meet our district criteria? Does the service learning meet our district criteria? I think those are conversations too, that being a smaller school, that we're going to have to be somewhat flexible and make some decisions there on how we can make it available to students.
Anne has a comment, I think.
I was going to say, when the council presented, she had said, if you took all 5 years of Spanish, you'd get 5 of the 8 classes. So in effect, some classes will happen before you're a junior, but
Right.
maybe some aspects of
Do
this
they
would-
count
would-
those freshmen and also middle school? Okay.
Yeah, it just may be like the capstone types things would be, upper class.
The capstone class is the only one that they would be having to take junior or senior
Oh,
year,
okay.
because they usually take 8 required globally focused courses first.
Before, okay.
So they can start, taking French and finish 8th grade.
Okay. And then another question I had was the committee who's going to have to review all this, are they just volunteering their time, or is there, okay.
So
We use a PLC time to discuss that, other built-in time to discuss and review criteria.
So at first I think I heard 6 classes, but then did I just hear 8? And of those classes, they're just semesters?
8 total classes, courses.
Okay, not
And
year-long,
again, we
but-
could have students who have already met that criteria, if taken the 8 classes we consider globally focused.
Mm-hmm.
All they would need is an opportunity to take the humanities capstone. I would also mention the legislation behind this is pretty interesting in that there's a short, I think it's a 2-week notification window from when you're saying a student's going to be awarded a certificate to when it has to be issued. So it's an interesting piece of that legislation, but this could be done in a relatively short amount of time.
The actual getting the certificate?
In terms of once we get to that point, there's not a lot of waiting time to be
Okay.
approved to be able to generate the certificate.
Okay. And is there some sort of regulation by the state on which classes count? Do you have to get approved? Or it's whatever you say?
Yeah, and I spoke closely with Seth Brady in Naperville, who spent a lot of time with this. Once the committee says these are our courses, They've submitted to their district for approval. Once that they say yes, that's it. We just notify ISB that we are doing this. So there's not an audit there. It's really a lot of flexibility on our part.
And are there any colleges that know about this or who are going to recognize this? Or is there any, I don't know, yet? Or will it just be?
Well, it's not like an ACT score. I mean, but like Ashley said, it does look good on the resume.
Okay.
Would just mention, this has passed the Illinois Assembly, so this is something that goes on the transcript. It's a recognized program. Colleges would consider it.
Would you know how many in the state of Illinois have this program?
I hope I can find that out.
Be interested to know. I mean, I'm sure other states also have this type of program.
Well, this is the only global, they may have something similar, but yeah.
So you could maybe find out how many. I'd be interested to know, I mean, just how many other schools.
Sure, definitely.
We'd be the only one in the area. That's kind of nice.
It definitely is. And another great job bringing a program to Dunlap. I think you did with the summer school. I mean, you're out there, you know, bringing things that other schools don't have that, you know, distinguishes you again. So that's
I
great.
appreciate that. I think that just, we want to capitalize on our diversity and some things we're already doing. We're so close to making it official. We just needed that capstone course and a little extra work in cleaning it up. It's just a great opportunity for some students who have that very specific interest.
I think too, as listening to this, boy, how exciting this is for students. We live in a global society, right? And one of them is the globally focused service learning where you indicated where they're going to communicate probably Skype or whatever it might be, right? Globally. I mean, boy, that's just awesome. Great job.
So the cost is just the one course? Okay.
And it will be absorbed likely by somebody who's already on staff. You know, so it may or may not cost a dime, depending upon how the schedule's going.
I just want to say thank you again for your work on this, and I do want to ask, how many students would you anticipate would be taking part in this?
I think, you know what, that's an interesting question, because I think if we were to review their transcript at this point, there's a lot of kids that are close to this already. So we could have a large percentage of our graduates have that global scholar designation. It wouldn't be a select few.
Okay,
It would be, now, if they had that opportunity, it would be that those people who decide to go forward with the capstone portion of it. But, I mean, we don't have any way of knowing that at this point. But a lot of kids are in position to take advantage of that now.
And do you think you would work with the counselors to identify the students that are really close and say, hey, we have this new program, this is what you have to do?
Absolutely.
And how many kids could you catch in this year, this 18-19 school year?
Well, you're not making the proposal for the capstone course this year. But I mean, for our juniors, absolutely, we could, if you were to go ahead for this, we could communicate with that with the parents, and we would do everything we could to promote the program and say, hey, this is what you have to do. It's maybe just change going from this elective to this elective, following through with the capstone, and you get this designation, and you can have the benefits, what that would do for them, and so forth. So, yeah,
that's
that would
my
be
concern,
easy to do.
If there are kids that are going down that road anyway, if you
Exactly.
can catch them in time to by the time you get it, you know, they know that I take this capstone and.
To your point, okay, so yeah, we're going to register in January of this year, so we can absolutely know at that point, hey, we've got this capstone class, we've reviewed your transcripts, you just need to do this, and you're in. And I think a lot of kids would jump on it. And to your point, Teresa, we already have our students communicating with other countries on Skype all the time. That's kind of what, that was the genesis for this. They're communicating with their friends, they transferred back from Belgium or wherever else, and it's just a thing that we are unique in our diversity with the languages we speak, that we have an opportunity to bring this to the kids for something we're really already close to doing.
And with John's question on the timeline, you indicate, what is your proposed timeline? Did you say January, or we didn't go through that?
January is for registration, so obviously we're bringing this to you for information, for action next month, so that would be something we would roll out on the course selection guide. So the council would be able to inform them at their class meetings about the program, and they could sign up based on their interest for that capstone course in January for the following year.
Excellent.
And is this something that you think you would maybe offer in the summer, the capstone?
I'm not going to say we wouldn't, but I don't think we'd offer it this summer.
Right.
But we could certainly have that dialogue, because that summer courses won't be decided till March. So we can certainly have that dialogue. If there's interest there, and if the counselors come back and say, I had 10 kids, and Kim Cotton had 8 kids that said they'd love to fit in, but they can't, can we do that over the summer? Because the way the curriculum looks, it's certainly plausible to do that in a blended atmosphere, a blended environment.
Right.
So as long as you're willing to entertain that offering in the summer, we could potentially bring that to you in the summer.
I applaud the teachers that are just so willing to embrace this because they see this as a positive for our students. You know, it's going to be more work for them, but it's wonderful that you have students that are teachers that are on board and really excited about it. If we have something that our teachers are excited about, I think it's something we need to really consider.
Thank you.
Not to even mention the principal being a little excited. Yeah.
He gets excited.
I get pretty excited, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, information is included in the board packet.
Go ahead. You can applaud that.
Information is included in the board packet regarding new course proposals for Dunlap High School. Mrs. Bowman is here to share information with the board.
Okay, good evening. I wanted to give you a little background information before we get started. I know Mr. Johnson had recognized the ILT members that are here, and they are all very significant in bringing all of these courses that we're here presenting to you. They played a large role in that. Mr. Adrian went to them and said, what are some different options that we have that we can really provide to our students where we're meeting our mission. We're empowering all of our students to meet their full potential, and that was a big key component in the different courses that we're offering. So we tried to offer different selections that are addressing all different levels of students. It's also important to note that I did put it in the background information, but the financial considerations that are in here are at the max. And the reason I state that is I want to be fully transparent with you, but there is a great chance that if you were to approve all of these courses, the total expenditure amount on here would not be necessary because of several different things. One of them being summer courses, which I'll get to specifically when I talk about some of those courses. Also, it depends, you know, you have X number of students, so you offer X number of courses. Some that may be made this year in the schedule wouldn't make next year, just depending upon what the interest level of the students are. So I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out ahead of time before we got into that. So the first course that's on there is the Unified Physical Education. That is a course that would be available to some of our students with special needs. It's a modified PE course. It's offered at many different districts throughout the state, and really our PE department felt that that was a strong need for our students for them to be successful in that PE course. So that was one that they took a look at there.
And is that, I thought there was something where there'd be other kids in there
Yes.
too? Or is it?
Correct.
2 to 1.
Yep.
Okay.
So those students who are also able-bodied and helping the unified student would, that's the term unified, comes with able-bodied and disabled students together.
Okay.
So they would also have earning credit for PE as well for helping those students.
Okay,
So
and
it's
they
kind
would
of like the
just,
best buddies extended into the classroom.
they would volunteer for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And there's really no financial considerations for that other than equipment that would be necessary, because that could be caught by one of our current physical education teachers. Along those same lines, the PE department wanted to be able to offer personal fitness in physical education. This is really a growing trend in physical education, and felt that this was a great tie-in to real-world application, different needs that students have related to nutrition and wellness. It ties in very well there. So they had offered dance in the past. That just hasn't been as popular with the students, so they felt that this would be a better option.
But there is a nutrition piece in it that they would learn about healthy.
Correct, absolutely.
Food and-
Yep, they're setting personal goals. They're looking at how they can reach that optimal health level, just talking about a healthy lifestyle all around. The next 2 courses that are on there are very similar. It's Cultures of the Spanish-Speaking and French-Speaking World. Each of these courses would be semester-long elective courses. They would not count for foreign language credit because the primary language spoken would not be the Spanish or French. There would be some aspects of the vocabulary and language brought in, but it's primarily a culture course. The benefit of this would be dual-fold. There's 2 different target audiences possibly. One being those students who are on that AP track. The AP foreign language program is very heavy in the cultural aspect, but there are a lot of language goals to meet as well. And so that cultural piece sometimes gets pushed to the back when they're trying to work on some of the writing and the linguistic pieces. And so this could be a support for those students to help them be more successful on that AP exam. It could also be an option for some of our students who maybe are coming into high school, didn't have the option to take a foreign language in middle school and aren't certain what they want to do. This would provide some background in those before they chose to get into that Spanish or that French speaking course. With the financial considerations here, I think it's important to mention, particularly with the Spanish, we currently have 3 teachers in our Spanish department that are on overload. And so we have a need for an additional Spanish teacher for next year anyhow. And so if this course were to make and be a part of that load, it would just help round out that teaching load. So the other benefit of if we know that this is approved next month, that might be something we could put out there a little earlier to start enticing some of those graduates or get some other people to come over and teach that foreign language.
And we're going to hope that we find a teacher, because I know that Spanish is hard. French maybe too, I don't know, but we've had problems in the past.
It could
So it's
be. Our
concerning, I
French,
guess.
actually French right now, we have one teacher who does some French and some social studies, so there is a little bit of flexibility there. If there were to be an uptick in the French,
Right.
we'd have a little flexibility there.
What about Spanish?
Spanish is tighter.
Yeah, okay.
So would we be needing to hire an additional teacher without this class for Spanish and French?
At this point, we'd probably be looking at a 0.5 FTE for sure.
Well, for sure, we have that on the books right now.
Right.
With large class sizes, so we can comfortably handle 0.75 right now, and then with this would be a full.
Right. The other consideration, Dr. Dearman mentioned redistricting. When you take a look at our current numbers, we have 2 classes of Spanish, 1 pre-AP at Dunlap Middle, 1 class at Dunlap Valley, but with the redistribution of numbers and where that may be, it may be more feasible then to increase that middle school foreign language to 2 and 2 instead of 2 and 1, instead of cutting programming, because that would be the other option, to go 1 and 1. So that would be another thing that could round out the schedule for that person.
And then we're still covered at the elementary school? If
Correct.
that
Yeah,
occurs?
that's not touching elementary.
So this person could do, you're saying, the high school cultural class plus the additional
Right.
middle school?
We would work that out. We have some teachers that do splits. I mean, that's getting into the really nitty gritty, but it would definitely work out. After those, we have video media production. We currently have a media club, but we do not have a course for this. This is really taking a look at some of those skills in video production. I mean, they could be editing board meetings. They could be taking a look at the different sporting events. We are currently the only school in the Mid-Illini that does not utilize streaming capabilities for some of our sporting events, so that could be a part of this course as well. There are just a lot of different avenues that could benefit our students and provide them with some skills that might help them in a future job endeavor with this course. The other thing to consider there is if it's taught by a CTE teacher, we could get some Perfect reimbursement for that as well. Perfect is a program we work through for all of our CTE courses. AP Studio Art was another one being offered. Currently, our students that go the art route oftentimes end up taking they end up doing an independent study. However, they're very well versed and ready to move into that AP art program. We just don't currently offer it. So it would be structured in the same way those students that were ready for that AP art instead of doing the independent study would then be getting the AP credit and could take an exam for it. So it would really be meeting the needs of our current students.
That would mark the 3rd year in a row we've brought an AP course for approval to the board. And as you know, that's important to be beyond this.
Absolutely. The next several courses are CTE courses or FACS courses, the Care and Learning Services occupations, the Nutrition and Wellness occupations, and the Life Skills in the Kitchen would all fall under that Family and Consumer Science department. Really taking a look at how are we preparing those students who maybe are not college ready, but are more career oriented, and how are they going to get into those fields and get a little more specific experience in those fields. The Nutrition and Wellness occupations one could also pair with the PE course, the personal fitness that was offered earlier, and count for a PE credit if that was a co-taught course. So that's an option there as well for those students who aren't as excited about some of the sports or different aspects of that physical fitness. This could pair well for them as well. And again, when we have that FACS, that CTE teacher, that perfect money could be available to us as well. And they provide a lot of different equipment, services.
What money is that?
Money, what kind of a percentage is that? Is that just a small percentage?
It's a little higher than that. It was in the 60s this year, so about $60,000.
For equipment.
Correct, and for different needs for those courses, yes. And it does supplement one salary as well.
Yeah. So it's significant. We want to make sure we capture it.
The life skills in the kitchen, the thing I wanted to emphasize about that as well is oftentimes we have students with special needs who, they're getting into the kitchen, but there isn't necessarily a time for them to be able to do that, so this would give them that dedicated time to give them some of the skills that they need to be successful.
When you say they're getting into the kitchen, you have a foods class or something that?
There is not currently a foods class for them. That's what this course would offer.
Okay.
It's very informal, but they do get in there, but it's hit or miss based on the rest of the schedules. So it's not as significant as those teachers would like it to be.
Could provide some additional structure for that. The basic family resource management and planning. Currently, resource management is a graduation requirement for all of our students, but it touches on some higher level concepts. And so this course was brought to us by the special education department. They wanted to be able to structure that course to specifically train those students in the needs and the skills that they're going to have to be successful in life. So it would just take that course, change it and modify it a little bit so that it was applicable to them, but still count as a graduation requirement course. And then the last one on there is that humanities course. That was the one that goes along with the Global Scholar Program that Mr. Johnson presented on as well. So that, I think he provided you quite a bit of information on that. I won't get into any further detail unless you have other questions on that.
I had questions about the Spanish culture and French culture. It said something about cultural challenges and focus the vocabulary on the specific challenges. I didn't understand that.
I think it would teach them some of the vocabulary that's incorporated when they're learning about different challenges of that culture.
Okay.
Was my understanding of that.
Okay.
Both of these two courses.
She can answer.
Yeah.
This is Lauren Hansen. She's our foreign language chair. Go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah. So the whole idea is that it's focused on the global challenges, which is an AP theme, basically looking at issues that are going on in those countries, such as like environmental issues, political stuff, human rights things, and kind of comparing even things like family structure, educational structure, and comparing across cultures the challenges that are happening in those different French and Spanish-speaking countries. And as you go through each theme, we will be bringing like appropriately basic vocabulary, key phrases that they would need if they were in the Global Scholars Program to do their cultural dialogue. The idea being if we learn some vocabulary that's associated with those topics, we're able, especially for those kids who are in the AP, on the AP track and more on the Global Scholars track, to go in with a little bit of cultural competency to the table and be like, I understand the struggles that you're going through, and I'm here with a little bit of the language to demonstrate the fact that I can communicate with you somewhat in your language. So it's kind of a feet in the water for kids who don't have a foreign language, and then for the kids who do have a foreign language, it's an extra support.
See, it makes sense when she explains it.
Yeah. So then these two classes would, your team is going to have those part of the Global Scholar Certificate?
Yes, they could qualify towards that certificate, absolutely.
See, and just so you understand, that we may have 40 classes that qualify for the global.
Yeah.
They just need to have 8 of them, you know, so
Okay.
that definitely, in my mind, that would be clear cut.
Yeah, that's it.
Did you, no, sorry. No, the only other thing on here was there is one name change. This is down below, this isn't a new course, but currently Nutrition and Culinary Arts 2, they're looking at changing the name to Culinary Occupations. That's just in line. They meet with Chris Kendall, the director of Perfect, and in order to qualify for some of that state funding, sometimes you have to make certain that your courses are all aligned, and so the name of that course just needs to change. Same concepts, different title.
Are there any other courses, not mentioned here, but that maybe need to be reworked, updated, that you're looking at going forward? Maybe some are old.
We haven't pulled any out this year. In the past, I know we have. I believe my first year here, we took a look at some of the art classes that weren't making and pulled those out. For the most part, the majority of our courses are making, so it doesn't seem to be that any need to be pulled out at this time.
We got into a couple of the content areas, and it was going to be more work that we wanted to bring to you in a, I don't want to say an expedited timeline, but we thought we needed some significant time to revamp some things and align them and clean them up and streamline them a little bit better. And that's what our goal is this year, to bring those to you next fall with some more structure to those.
Okay.
One thing I
Yes.
noticed is with the offerings in the summer school and with a few more students being able to take the honors courses in the 8th grade, I would imagine that some students are getting to sophomore year and having a lot of their requirements out of the way. And is there going to be greater opportunity for classes like dual credit at a younger age, or AP at a younger age, or I don't know, classes to
One thing
cover
that's-
that opening of time?
One thing that's on the horizon when it comes to AP is our current AP World History course. College Board is looking at changing the structure of that course and actually breaking it into 2 AP courses. So there would be an AP Ancient, and then there would be a regular AP World. So that is something that I had to submit paperwork just that we would be interested in doing that. And that could be a sophomore level course.
And what about dual credit? I know that the ICC allows dual credit, but we don't allow it at the sophomore or freshman year.
That would be something we would have to look into.
Yeah.
We definitely could though.
Certainly open to it, yeah.
And I think the only stipulation from ICC is you have to be 16 years of age. I think
And have
that's-
But
approval.
there's an exception there.
Yeah,
too.
there's an exception. You get approval from the
Yeah.
dean or president or
Yeah,
something.
you have to score on their entrance exam.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I would think a lot of our students would qualify for that.
Well, it'll be interesting, because this will be the 3rd summer we offer, and the more data we have, and as you can see, the last 3 years, we've brought significant changes, even with the alternative ed has changed things, and we've lowered our class sizes with the summer school. So we're certainly open to looking at that more.
Well, it's a great problem to have.
Yeah.
That
It
these
is.
kids are taking these classes in the summer and they have openings in their schedule.
Yeah, it is, and they can choose more electives and have a richer experience.
Absolutely. Other questions?
I want to thank you that, these courses kind of touch on all different groups of students, that we are worried about increasing our AP and keeping the AP honors, status, but we're also worried about students that need a little bit more help, and what are we offering them? So I appreciate that you all are across the spectrum.
That's a credit to the department chairs and the hard work that they put in as well. They really brought this all forward to us. We wouldn't be here without them.
Thank
It's
you.
nice that we're focusing on both kids being work ready and college ready.
Okay, and any other comments or questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Information is included in the packet regarding the PE waiver process. Mrs. Bowman is here to share information.
Absolutely. So last spring, you guys had asked us to take a look at our PE waiver process and what we were able to do for students that possibly wanted to waive out of PE due to participating in athletics or band, but did not want to just be in a study hall. So the process that we've brought to you this month really encompasses that and gives them that opportunity to enroll in a course instead of simply being enrolled in a study hall.
I had a question about it, and I wasn't sure, I might not have been reading it correctly, but can a student only get the waiver if they take 7 classes?
No, I'm not sure we see that.
Yeah.
6 is a full schedule, so they can get it for
Yeah.
6.
Right.
Okay,
I think that just comes into play when they were talking about if you want to take a year-long course.
Oh, it's only if you want to take a year-long course?
Well, I think that's
It's-
where you heard a full schedule.
On 188.
So
number
it says, if a student
Yes,
athlete takes an
188.
extra full year.
Or, yeah, I'm sorry.
Under provision 1, letter B.
B. And if all 6 remaining courses for the year are full year courses, the student may be excused from physical education for the entire year, even if the interscholastic sport covers less than that time period. I guess, is there a limitation? So say a student is only taking 5 substantive classes, can they get the waiver for PE?
I think you have to be a full-time student, if I'm not mistaken.
And that's
You have to have at least 6.
6, okay. Okay, and so, but to take the full year, you have to have 7, is that correct? Or am I reading that wrong?
They need
It says 6
six.
remaining, so is that in addition to the waivered class? So does that mean 7?
Yes.
Okay. And so why is that?
So they're a full-time student. They have to be a full-time student, so they couldn't have early release.
Oh, they
Something
can't?
like that, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong.
You know,
They're
the-
looking at provision 1, letter B, correct?
And I'm just thinking about a lot of our athletes have the early release so that they can go out and practice, or so that they maybe don't miss as much school when they have away meets, and so or away matches or away games. And so I was just wondering why that's in there.
Why that was in there? You know what, that might be something we need to take back and discuss and see if that's something we feel we need to leave in there or not. So we'll take that back and discuss that and see, and we can discuss that with the PE department and with our coaches and see if we have any changes for next month on that.
Okay,
My
thanks.
thought in reading that, and it may be wrong, but it's, if they're taking 6 classes, 6 hours, then they're all year long courses. There's no way for them, you know, they're full-time. And so there's no way to stick PE, you know, if they're in a fall sport, then they should take PE in the spring because they're not in a sport anymore. But if you've signed up for 6 classes that are all year round, then you get a waiver
Exempt from
for
PE,
the
right.
full year because you're taking a full year class.
And that's how I understood it.
You know, the only issue is, I mean, I think some of these athletes, it's actually requiring them to take 7, right? I think it should be 5 too. Because then you're asking them to take kind of an extra load potentially
I see
at their
that,
busy
6
time of
hours.
year.
We had a lot of people working on this,
Okay.
and we thought we had it the way we wanted it, but let's just take it back to our group
Yeah.
and see why, if we're missing something, but maybe we missed that.
Yep, see if it works on a schedule and let us
Okay.
know.
Yep,
Thank you.
definitely.
Any other questions or comments?
There's a lot to this.
I know, I know. Oh, I know.
I'm trying to make it perfect for everyone.
I did have another question, and maybe it was in there, but so if a sport hasn't even started yet, so say the sport is a spring sport, and they plan to go out, and then they change their mind, you know, so they just switch from a class, we're able to switch from a class and make them go to PE in the middle?
No, they're
No.
gonna finish that class, but they're gonna be short that quarter.
Then they'd have to
credit
take
fee.
2 PEs another time?
They'll have to take
Correct.
another fee. Now, listen, we need to talk about that,
Or some-
because
okay.
there is a way to make that stuff up online, but that's another discussion. But if we have this, and we have a senior, let's say baseball, softball player don't make the team, doesn't make the team, okay, we're gonna let them graduate? We're gonna let them go through ceremony and make them
Right.
credit? I mean, that's something we'll have to talk about.
Okay, so there's gonna be a provision for that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Dr. Dearman will share information regarding the 2019-2020 already, calendar.
I know. This will be hopefully fairly quick and easy. Living this year's calendar for the first time. I know there was a survey done last year, so the data there is relevant and it's timely, and there were some changes made to the schedule from that survey and the results. I met with John and Sarah and had conversations with the union about their thoughts on the calendar. Looking at corresponding dates as far as start and end, Jeremy is pulling some information together from the admins on back to school night and those types of things, open house, trying to clean that up. There were some problems from their perspective on that this year that they'd maybe like to tweak. So I'm just letting the board know and asking for direction, but I plan to go corresponding dates and consult with those entities and the full admin team, and then bring a calendar forward unless you tell me something different other than corresponding dates to move forward with.
I'm okay with that. Everybody else okay with keeping it the same?
And
Okay,
it lines up pretty well when you look at
okay,
start of school and when the winter break would be and so on and so forth.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Information regarding revisions to board policies is included in the board packet. Are there any questions or discussion?
Heather, do you have an update on that?
The only one, Beth had asked a question about, and now I've got to pull up the 7, thank you, about the health. And so the discussion that we had in the policy committee was that we wanted to make sure we were allowing students who moved in from out of state the ability to have 30 days to make sure they were getting their waiver. The problem I'm running into is, let's say you have somebody who, or by out of state, who's been out of country. Somebody moves, they come to enroll on August 12th, with school starting, say, on the 15th. For our current policy, they by the first day of school. And that can be a real barrier or challenge. So wanting to add that out-of-state language there so that that's corrected for them. The only discussion that we just had back and forth last night, and Alyssa and I spoke briefly with our nurse, is that the mid-year portion may need to stay in there as well. So it would stay out of state and mid-year. And that was something that we missed in the policy committee discussion because we require all students to have immunizations by the first day of school, as do many Illinois districts. However, that is not school code. They don't necessarily have to. So you could get somebody who would move from an Illinois district that did not have that as a requirement prior to the first day of school, and we would still want to allow them to have those 30 days to get that physical immunization turned into the office. So that would be the only possible change that could take place within that policy for next month, but very, very minor.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Heather. The Resolutions Committee report for the upcoming delegate assembly is included in the packet for review. Dr. Dearman has information regarding the resolutions.
Sure, there's 8 resolutions, and you've been up to the III conference before as a board member. Usually the delegate assembly is pretty straightforward, rubber stamp type things. Went to the division dinner last week, and they went through and talked about this. So the Illinois Association of School Boards is very much aware that some of these are controversial, and they discussed it at that meeting. What I'm referring to are resolutions 1, 2, and 3. If you read through them, they are all very similar. The differences between the 3, number 1, basically what it's talking about is with the arming of administration, faculty, and staff. And with certain criteria such as concealed carry training, additional training, things of this nature. Then the first one states that the local school board, they're wanting to push legislation that allow the local school boards to adopt policy to arm their people with a board-approved training. And the Resolutions Committee said they're asking not to approve that. The second one is same as number 1, support legislation, so on and so forth, but with a state-approved program. In addition to the background checks, additional trainings, and the concealed carry. The committee recommends supporting that one, the Resolutions Committee from Illinois State Association of School Boards. And then number 3, very similar to the first 2, except it takes out the multiple background checks and the presenting this to state reps and senators. The committee for number 3 is saying do not adopt. So 1 and 3 they're saying no. Number 2 they're saying yes. I believe we've had this discussion. I know the admin team I've gotten feedback from. I know my personal feeling. We're not in the business of carrying guns. That's why we have school resource officers. If you look at some of the schools that brought these forward, these resolutions, if you read the rationale, in smaller districts where maybe they don't have the financial capability to have SROs, this might make more sense. Has anybody been through the concealed carry class that sits on the board, other than me? I have. That would not prepare you for a school situation. It's more home. And I'm just telling you as an administrator myself, as a school teacher, if I was in that situation, heaven forbid, let's just say that. I wouldn't want to be in that situation I'm in the business of educating, caring for children, promoting, advocating for them. I don't want to have to be carrying a gun. And I know I speak for a vast majority of our admin team. They don't want to be in that situation either. Our own attorney, as I believe you guys have reached out to before, Jay Greening, there's some legal implications if you do that. But I also ask you to look at one of the school shootings that happened, unfortunately, Sandy Hook, and that teacher, the gunman was coming down the hallway, and she had the keys in her hands, and she's fumbling with those keys, try and just get a key in the doorway to open the door to get out of harm's way. But, in that moment, you can't imagine unless you're in that moment. But now, to put a gun in that person's hand, regardless of the training, and then have, if there's a crowd, I got to pick that person out of the crowd and better hope my aim's good. It's just, we're not in the business of doing that. So my personal recommendation, and this is going to be a personal decision by each board member, is to vote no on number 2. But as a board, next month, we'll have to have direction for Beth to vote to represent our district. But I wanted to bring those forward and kind of share my thoughts on them, and also with the understanding that the Illinois Association of School Boards knows this is going to be controversial. They've been very upfront about that.
So is it allowing school districts if they want to do this, or is it requiring?
It's allowing the option.
Allowing, so.
Which if you read number 6, it talks, basically it says, let's leave those decisions at the local level. I like that one. It kind of flies in the face of 1, 2, and 3, but so there's.
So 2 allows it to be at the local.
As long as it's a state course.
As long as it's a state approved.
That's the one they're saying, is if the state comes up with the additional requirement of the training, in addition to concealed carry and background checks, they're saying, okay, we can support that one.
A school district would have to vote for it.
Yes.
Okay. It'd have to be approved.
Correct.
And so the training would be, who would determine the training? It wouldn't just be concealed carry, so would it be the state police? Or
It says the state.
the state, okay.
I don't know who that would be.
Okay.
For a smaller district, I could see where that would be very, beneficial if they're having financial issues, but the liability just seems to be huge.
Well, it kind of flies in the face of common sense. We want to make school more secure by bringing more guns in. And heaven forbid that teacher, not purposely, but absentmindedly in a hurry, we're all busy, forgets and leaves that gun somewhere, or gets in a tussle with a student and they disarm them.
We're fortunate that
It concerns me.
resource officers that we can afford that,
So I was always for local control, and my husband started getting on me that I should be out practicing more. I should be doing this weekly. And I thought, are you kidding me? I've always been just a good shot. It's just luck, right? You shoot and whatever. So one day I was talking to one of the snipers, and he said, I was military in the past, and so I was kind of complaining to him of what my husband thought I should be doing. And he said, well, he's right, because when we're over there, even though we're in the right and we know we're in the right and we're going into those villages and those huts and trying to clear the way, he said it's unbelievable the emotion that is within you, and you're at point range, 10, 12 feet, and you can still miss because that adrenaline rush just kind of takes over. And so after he told me that, I started thinking about it a little differently, yeah.
So what do you want from us? So first of all, I guess, can we just get agreement that the board is okay with 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6? Those are the ones that are not controversial?
No.
1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, are we okay with the recommendations on?
With everything
1
except
and
number
3
2.
is recommending no, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So is everybody okay with the IASB recommendations on 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6? Okay. So how about we just talk about 2?
That's fine.
Okay. So you want to just want me to go around the table?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Abby, you want to
For
start?
our district, I think I agree with your recommendation that we not support 2. We not support allowing that 2.
Okay. For our district.
Wait,
for the vote for her?
They're recommending
Yes for 2, but you're saying you're okay with no.
I'm okay with no,
Okay.
based on being a representative of Dunlap School District, knowing we have resource officers. I'm okay with Dr. Dearman's suggestion.
Okay. Dawn?
I agree with that. I'm okay with Dr. Dearman's suggestion as well for no, because even though we have resource officers, and I think that's the appropriate way to try to handle these situations, but I guess my fear is going forward, if once you do allow it, then, depending on what board you have sitting here, then you open that door for it to come into the district. So I would be a no.
Beth?
I'm going to be a no.
Okay. I'm a yes.
I completely agree with when Dr. Dearman knows this. We had this conversation about it. Completely agree with Dr. Dearman on this. You definitely don't want to make a bad situation worse by having someone who's not, it's a judgment call, right? You're responsible for where that piece of lead goes, right? So I'm a no on this one.
So are you in favor of
I'm
voting
going along with the ISD recommendation.
that would allow a board
Would
to
allow
hire?
a
Including
district,
our board, yeah.
a district
Our
to
district.
approve it.
Okay, yeah, I disagree, I follow what everybody else is, based on what Dr. Dearman suggested.
Okay. You all set?
All set?
Okay.
Thank you.
Information regarding the Education Advisory Board. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, the resolutions, we need to do, oh,
No, I'm right.
no. Information regarding the Education Advisory Board is included in the packet. Dr. Dearman would like to discuss this with the board.
Okay. I wish I would have had this immediately after Heather. I should have, because it segued perfectly. And he brought up some great points. We have some doors that are opening some opportunities before us. Scott and his staff, not just Scott, his staff have done a great job of trying to take advantage of some of those opportunities and bring those to our students to improve the educational experience for them and the opportunities to move forward. One of the things that was brought to me by you when I came in is, bringing a fresh set of eyes to the district, looking at things differently, and then bringing recommendations to move forward. One of the problems that I have is, having been local in a smaller district, you look at what others are doing and and there's great things happening all over central Illinois, don't get me wrong. But a lot of times you look at those top performing schools, what are they doing? We want to be like them. We got our ACT scores today, our composite, 27. If I'm at a small, I want to look, how are they doing that? So people are looking at Dunlap. I can tell you because I was.
It was a 27?
27 is our composite. They just got released today at 3 a.m.
Average?
From 24 to 20, that's a kind of a jump.
Yeah,
You have to keep in mind, not all students took it.
Oh, because of the
201
SAT.
students that took it, that's the
Okay,
difference. The first
okay,
year that
okay,
class that
okay.
took SAT.
So everybody's going to be
Got
up.
Correct, yes, but still higher than the state average.
How many took it last year?
300, I have a number right here, yeah, 313, 314,
So now they don't take the SAT.
312.
So everybody that the ACT went up, it's
Yeah.
27. Very good.
But we still had a vast majority take it, so it's not like we have
Right.
four of
And the
our
state-
brightest take
Yeah, the
it.
state composite was 23.9.
And more impressive.
What was it last year?
95% of them were in college.
Right, so you see that correlation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can you say that again? I missed it, sorry.
Said more impressive that the 95% of them were college composition ready,
Yes.
which is the biggest remedial course freshmen in college take. So that's
Great.
All right, let's refocus.
Okay, sorry.
Refocus.
Yeah. We got excited there.
That's a good thing to get excited about. But if I look in Central, we are that district that a lot of people look to as the example of success. So when you want to try and copy and steal things from other people, there's not a whole lot to draw from this area, as I feel, for this district. So where do we look? Well, Scott brought up, that Global Scholar Program. Where did that come from? Or where, there's Naperville. We're the only school south of I-80, so we have to look north. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's good. But one of the other goals I have for this district is, we want to be the best district in central Illinois, downstate Illinois, but also all of Illinois. But now let's start looking nationally. Let's look at the big picture. How can we expand our horizons? Well, to do that nationally, sitting here, is difficult to do, and we're all stretched with time. And resources are limited as far as being able to get out there and do that and do it adequately. So I ran across this company. I met them when I was in Springfield at the State Superintendent's Conference that does this type of work, that works with 1,400 colleges and universities, and can do this type of research as far as, what are others doing nationally to get to these upper tier college institutions. So they'll do a 6 to 9 month research study, in-depth research study, present those findings to you, and then also an implementation strategy of do's and don'ts. This is what others have done that has worked. Don't do this because this hasn't. So I'm not saying this is the only game in town. When I shared this, Beth got a hold of me and shared, one of the institutions that Solomon, I believe, that did similar type work. But what I liked about this one is you could present 2 or 3 questions and they'll do research and one price kind of covers all. So that social emotional learning that is a big component. The stress on our students to be at the achievement level, teen suicide, things of this nature. They can provide resources on that and what others have done to combat that. Not saying we haven't worked on that, but you can always get better. They provide an opportunity to learn and see best practices that what others have done. The achievement gap is identified through ESSA, which that's a whole other conversation about the designations that we won't get into at this point. But irregardless, we're doing some things. Obviously, look at the courses that were presented to you tonight for those students that may be not going to the college level or some of those students that may be struggling. This will be an opportunity to see what others are doing in that aspect. So it's across the board. So I'm not wanting any kind of action, so to speak, tonight. This is more informational that I am researching it. If you have ideas, Beth mentioned something about a think tank. We have the community engagement DLT meeting next week. That's obviously going to be a topic of discussion. We're going to tap into those different resources and see what ideas come from that. But I'm just letting the board know I'm doing that legwork, doing some research and trying to look at, we've got all these opportunities before us, but now how can we take all this stuff and streamline it and get it in a pointed direction? And we can learn from what others have done because others have done it successfully. That's the plan here.
If you could get some references, I don't know if other districts that you know of that have done this and what they have to say. And
I know that Champaign's using them now. I want to say Deerfield, District 214 in Chicago. There's a couple others. I haven't dug real deep into this yet.
When you get a chance,
Yeah,
it'd be
absolutely.
nice to hear back what they think. And when they talk about top tier colleges, I guess I'm wondering what is top tier to them. So they claim 1,300, college and university partners, and that's true probably.
Harvard, Brown, MIT were the 3 he gave me when I asked that question.
Okay, and then there's they mentioned 700 college and university executives. Okay, so that's just would be some information.
Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
What is your thinking on timeline here? Where you would, is this something that's going to be an action item for us, or?
Not anytime soon,
Okay.
but just getting it on the radar because I'm tasked to do some of this work and just letting you know I'm making progress in that. But I think it dovetails very nicely with what is happening, especially at the high school level, and some of the things Scott's doing. And Karen hit on it. We're going to have some. I would think with the summer school expanding, some students maybe with some more flexibility in their schedule, and how can we take that flexibility and mold it and direct it in a positive direction in relation to what others have done that have been successful.
Mm-hmm. The other question I had too, with these priorities 1, 2, and 3, you mentioned where 1 comes from. But is this the 3 priorities that were identified for Dunlap? Was that identified by EAB or the Dunlap administration? Or?
The first one was out of the district leadership team that met prior to my arrival. They ranked different things that they saw as priorities, and social emotional learning was ranked number 1. Now, I heard from Karen that was faculty and staff was heavily represented in that, so that would make sense.
Yeah.
But that's where that information came from, is that DLT.
Oh, so these 3 priorities.
No, that first one.
Oh, okay.
The second one came through the high school with the U.S. News and World Report rankings.
Yeah,
And our
closing the
identification through
achievement gap.
ESSA with the underperforming schools.
Yeah.
That's number 2. And number 3 is just something I have gathered through information in interacting with colleagues in the district.
Okay. I was just curious because, I want to make sure that doing something like that, and of course, we definitely want to keep ourselves head and shoulders above the rest, and of course, having a national focus. It's great to be ranked, in the past, certain ranking in Illinois, but, on a national level, where do we want to stand? We do have kids going to great schools, but there certainly could be more. So I think the priorities are right. I just want to make sure that it fits in with our strategic plan and our mission.
Absolutely.
So, how it seems like it focuses quite a bit in Heather's wheelhouse. So just making sure that that fits with you guys, you three, what your needs are. Does this support you as you need it? Does it fill a void that you need to have
I
met?
think
time we're doing research on different projects, we have a lot of different connections throughout our administrative team to different districts, whether it's here in Central Illinois or whether it is further north. But I think to be able to expand globally and have access to some of those resources beyond our state could be a great benefit. I know a lot of our administrators work very heavily on their PLN, their professional learning network, and so we access people that way and make connections outside of the state. But this would be another way to do that and pull some of that research in. I definitely though would want to speak with some of the, like Dr. German said, speak with some of the districts who have utilized this particular company to see, what were the results? Did you get what you were looking for? Did it align with what you wanted? To be certain that it would be a good match for us.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. This concludes the information discussion item segment of the meeting, and we'll now move on to the consent agenda. Are there any clarifications or discussion regarding the items on the consent agenda? Okay, could I have a motion then to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
It's been moved by Abby Humble, seconded by Cheryl Bluth. Is there discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Humbles. Bluth.
Aye.
Bozeman.
Aye.
Disharum.
Aye.
Olshauser. Aye. Reed.
Aye.
Motion carries. The bill list, treasurer's report, and district investment report are included in the board packet. Are there any questions? Okay, could I have a motion to approve payment of the bills?
I move to approve payment of the bills in the amount of $4,525,185.54 as presented.
A second.
It's been moved by Cheryl Booth, seconded by Teresa Holzhauser. Is there any discussion?
I have one discussion.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a statement. I won't be approving the bills this month, and it's in no way a reflection of our skillful financial staff, but it's more so just in a statement purpose. Due to the board continuing to retain attorney Stan Eisenhammer, again, this attorney was hired on a 4-3 vote. I previously made a motion earlier this year to remove this attorney, which was voted down by the same 4-3 vote. This attorney has been allowed to protect certain board members and work specifically for board members, and we've been kept from critical information. We've requested this information for a long time and been told that we will not receive it by this attorney and specific board members. In addition to this information, which is not new, I'm bringing this forward again because I was made aware recently that this attorney on a tweet in social media made derogatory comments about teachers, likening their math skills to the level equal to or less than a McDonald's employee. This was brought to my attention, and I find this very disrespectful and extremely poor judgment. And I, again, don't think this is someone who should be being paid by our district, our taxpayers, and this is not a professional that we should retain. So again, that is the purpose that I will not be approving the bills this month.
And were there any bills for Mr. Eisenhammer being paid this month?
No.
Okay. No bills being paid by?
The fact that you are allowed to contact and we can generate bills at any time, we had made that conversation prior, so that
Okay.
would be the reason.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Bluth.
Aye.
Olshauser. Aye. Bozeman.
Nay.
Disharum.
Aye.
Humbles. Aye. Reed.
Aye.
Motion carries. Information regarding the resolution for refunding of bonds is included in the packet. Are there any questions? Could I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I move. It's a long one here.
Yeah.
I move to approve the resolution providing for the issue of not to exceed 12.6 million general obligation refunding school bonds of the district for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding bonds of the district, providing for the levy of a direct annual tax sufficient to pay the principal and interest on said bonds, authorizing the execution of an escrow letter agreement in connection with said refunding, and authorizing the sale of the bonds to the purchaser thereof.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Teresa Holzhauser, seconded by Cheryl Bluth. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Olshauser. Aye. Bluth.
Aye.
Disharum.
Aye.
Humbles. Reed.
Aye.
Bozeman.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Information regarding the contract renewal for the Bottling Group LLC is included in the board packet. Are there any questions? Could I have a motion to approve the contract? A motion, please?
I wasn't here, so I don't
Okay.
feel that I should make a motion
I
on
move to
vote,
approve the
but
contract renewal of Bottling Company LLC for the 2018-19 year as presented.
I did listen.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Abby Humble, seconded by Cheryl Bluth. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Humbles. Bluth.
Aye.
Olshauser.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Bozeman.
Aye.
Disharum.
Aye. Okay, the motion carries. Information regarding the construction of soccer shelters is included in the packet. Dr. Dearman has additional information for the board.
The only thing new I have is when Mike presented last month, he had pictures of the block structure from, I want to keep saying Rock Island, it's Moline. And those were really nice. And I don't know, it came from, it was Abby, or maybe it was Dawn, and asked about the block.
Right.
And I was kind of curious too, because it looked really nice. I'd like to have that. So I asked Mike to put together some numbers of what it would cost to do it in block, and he did so. And the cost is pretty exorbitant. So talked with Mike today, actually, and you know, what he has presented. It would present other issues if we went with the block, but what he has is very nice, will last a very long time, and matches what we have currently in place. But I was just curious and wanted to know. So that's
Okay.
it.
Any questions or discussion?
Thanks for the extra work.
Okay, could I
I
have
just
a
had
motion?
one question. I know we had the conversation and about as far as and I know we're working with the district leadership team and with the athletic director, just as far as other things that are out there.
Yes.
You know, I know that I completely agree with this. I know this is needed, and thank you for bringing it forward and putting the work towards it. But just to make sure that we're not leaving anyone or any programs behind as far as where the dollars are being distributed. So we are working on that, right?
That is Katie's athletic leadership team.
I just met with the coaches actually last week to start kind of gathering that information. We discussed it at the athletic leadership team meeting last Thursday, and we just talked about some of the things that were brought forward, and then we're going to discuss it more in depth next month. But I was missing a few coaches at the meeting, so just giving them a little bit extra time, you know, to bring that to me. So yes, I addressed it with the coaches and took it to the ALT, and we're going to work on moving forward with that.
Okay, and they're a part of this as well.
Correct.
And they're in agreement. They feel like this is something that should move forward. Oh, thank you very much.
And I want to echo what Dawn said too, and I think I mentioned that last time too, and I know you're working on that list too, and I know I've had a conversation with you, but as we look at this holistically, not just athletic, we have all the facilities here, so, you know, I think they all need to be prioritized, and, you know, in the event we have a roof leaking, of course, you know, we'd probably fix that before something else, and of course, you know, you have criteria for that based on, I think, you know, safety of other types of things, so just to make sure that we're looking at the whole list when we make these decisions.
It's absolutely comprehensive. And Don, answer your question, though, if this was on the priority list, it'd be in year one of the 5-year plan.
Okay.
Your soccer would be there anyway, so.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, if not, could I have a motion to approve the soccer shelters?
I move to approve the construction of the shelters for the amount not to exceed $38,000 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Abby Humbles made the motion, and Cheryl seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Humbles.
Aye.
Bluth.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Bozeman.
Aye.
Disharum.
Aye.
Olshauser.
Motion carries. This concludes the action items portion of the meeting. The board will now move into closed session. Can I have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
I move to adjourn to closed session for the following purposes as stated in the Open Meetings Act. A, the appointment, employment, compensation, and performance of specific employees. B, student disciplinary cases. C, discussion of minutes of meetings, lawful or closed. D, security procedures, and E, purchase of property.
Is there a second?
Second.
Teresa, did you? Okay. It was been moved by Cheryl Bluth, seconded by Teresa Holzhauser. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Bluth.
Aye.
Olshauser. Aye. Reed.
Aye.
Bozeman.
Aye.
Disharum.
Aye.
Humbles.
Motion carries. We're adjourned?
Yes,
Okay. Could I have a motion to approve the human resources consent agenda?
So moved, approve the human resource consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Abby Humble, seconded by Cheryl Bluth. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Humbles. Bluth.
Aye.
Bozeman. Aye. Disharum.
Aye.
Olshauser.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Motion carries. Could I please have a motion to approve the closed session minutes?
I move to approve the closed session minutes of the regular board meeting of September 19th, 2018 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Dawn Bozeman, seconded by Teresa Holzhauser. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Bozeman.
Aye.
Olshauser.
Aye.
Disharum.
Aye.
Humboldt. Reed.
Aye.
Blue.
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved by Cheryl Booth, seconded by Teresa Holzhauser. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:55.